YouTube.
Don't do that.
So you were talking about creating model airplanes?
Oh, yes. My first hobby, as such, was model airplanes. Rubber band powered, of course.
Right.
Then, and I'm remembering something that was very funny. In the model airplane magazines, you would always see, when you were like a double folds of a gorgeous girl
Right.
holding this airplane model
Right.
that her boyfriend or whomever
Yeah.
just finished.
Right.
Okay, so now I've just have finished this model airplane. It was a gas powered, and I was on the back lawn taking pictures of the newly finished, and my mother came out to hang clothes. Do you know what she looked like? In her hang with in clothespins.
Right. I remember those. Yeah. Yeah.
And she was out there hanging off up the wash, and I said, "Oh, Mom, would you hold this plane for me?"
You have a sense of humor.
Sure. So she held it. Well, the pictures came back, and picture my mom. Absolutely disinterested. What the hell is this all about?
Do you still have that picture?
No.
No, that'd be priceless.
Somewhere I do.
Priceless.
It was black and white,
Yeah,
of course.
of course. Yeah.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went from model airplanes to model trains,
Oh yeah.
HO gauge,
Right.
and about that time, I got married. So Norma and I both were doing model trains. Then divorce came, all that, So that all was disbanded, and then I started again. Oh, then I discovered motorcycles,
Right.
so that became my life, and happily so. I loved motorcycles, and and from motorcycles, Frank, let's say along the way, Frank went into the model trains
Uh-huh.
because he needed a hobby, and I said, you might think about that. So the trains were his, trains and horses, or ponies, and I was the motorcyclist. And after he died, of course, it all disintegrated.
I remember in the barn, in addition to the carriages, the horse carriages, and some of your motorcycles, you also had this wonderful humorous train setup. So it was HO gauge.
I sold it.
Yeah.
They haven't picked it up yet.
Oh yeah.
A club bought it.
Great.
Not motorcycle,
Train.
a train club, and it will be local, but not next door local, like East Los Angeles.
Right.
So
How great.
Patrick's son is a whiz on the computer, and he has been putting stuff that I've decided it's time to sell.
Right.
And one was this layout. He went around with his video like you're doing, and he went all the way around it and took pictures and posted it on the computer. And this club said, "We'll take it,"
That's
but they
great.
haven't picked it up yet.
That's great.
But it's going to be a covered transportation. I don't know what kind of covering, but that's good.
That's great.
But they're thrilled, and
Yeah.
I am too.
Yeah.
It's just,
It'll stay together. That's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is kind of a strange layout.
Well, I think there was some humor. I remember. Of course, I'm going back about 20 years here, but I think there were some things. There was a lot of humor.
A lot of humor.
Yeah.
That house with us, all the naked ladies.
Yeah, wasn't there House of Ill Repute
That's
in there?
right, that's what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
put the sign.
yeah.
Home for wayward girls or
Yeah.
something like that. But yes,
Yeah.
it was that. There was also a little motorcycle gathering
Uh-huh.
around a restaurant. Naturally, that's the rock store,
The rock store, yeah.
or represents the rock store.
Right.
There's the swimming hole on top with all
The naked swim.
boys
Yeah.
swimming.
Swimming. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
full of
full of great stuff. I mean, it's about 20 years ago, probably the last Christmas
that's
dinner
right.
that party that you had that I remember. So yeah, yeah. So if you're getting excited about motorcycles happen after your marriage, do you recall approximately when you got divorced or what year that was roughly? Because that would be when you really got the motorcycle bug. So.
True.
Yeah.
True. So that would have been 1957.
Wow. Okay. So way back in the
That's not way back.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was 3. So sorry, Jack. It's all relative.
You were what?
3.
Oh, that's funny. That really is.
Sorry, Jack. It wasn't way back. Okay.
But it's very funny.
I love it. Yeah. Well, tell me about the sidecar Ariel. That was like a museum piece. It was a square 4 with a beautiful sidecar.
Gerard's sidecar.
Yeah.
It was breathtaking.
It was. That
It
was.
belonged to another member of the Ariel Club. I'm reaching for his name. But
Sure.
I'm not. And it was at the sidecar rally down in Griffith Park. And I went down there to the sidecar rally, and I took one look at it and went,
Yeah.
it was dumbfounding.
Yeah, it's
It
beautiful.
was so beautiful.
It is beautiful.
So exquisite. I jumped right back in the car and came home. And I said to Frank, get in the car. We're going back to Griffith Park. You've got to see this before this guy drives away or rides away.
Right.
So it was embarrassing. Frank and I got there and we're walking toward the outfit. And Frank walked ahead of me, and Don Bowers, that's the guy that owned it.
Okay.
And he said to Don, how much?
Really?
I was mortified.
Yeah.
How much? What do you mean? It's not for sale. He just finished the restoration.
Right.
We don't. And Frank said, everybody has their price. And he wasn't the least bit interested in motorcycles.
No,
per
I know.
se,
Yeah.
But
yeah.
he was going to buy that for me to have.
For you, yeah.
Well, that's fine, but
How sweet.
nevertheless, Don said no.
Oh.
About 3 years went by, 2 years unknown. And Don Baker called Frank and said, Frank, you know that sidecar that you were interested in?
Yeah.
It's going to be for sale. It is? Yes, they're getting a divorce. And the wife said, Marlene, that was her name, the motorcycles go. So Frank called instantly to Don and we went over and picked it up. It was...
That's great. Beautiful.
And then, you know, there's always some overlap of, I'm in the middle of this restoration job, but here's another one. It's that kind of thing. So I couldn't get to the restoration instantly. But the first thing I did is take the bike over to Chuck.
Yeah,
And
Chuck
have him
Walton.
redo the engine
Yeah.
so that it was perfect.
Right.
And we're getting besieged with those tiny little birds,
Hummingbirds.
Hummingbird, oh, beautiful.
They're,
Oh, on the aloes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the orange flowers.
anyway, first I did the engine, and then I did the machine itself, cleaning up and just
Right.
making it everything perfect that could be.
It was perfect.
And then ultimately the sidecar itself.
Oh.
So it took several years
Right.
of doing that kind of work.
Yeah, it was exquisite. It's really beautiful.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
I
just
agree with you.
yeah, yeah.
And it had the rumble seat.
Yeah, in addition to the regular
You
sidecar
just-
comfort. Yeah, I could maybe show her pictures at
Yeah, I
some
saw
point.
it
Yeah,
last time.
yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was beautiful. So I ended up with 2 sidecar outfits.
Oh,
A
okay.
little Matchless,
Huh.
which, well, I used to say to someone conversationally, I have 2. One is the cutest I have ever seen, and the other is the most magnificent I have ever seen. So-
I know which was which. Tell me, no interview with you could ever be complete without talking about the Isetta story. When you first bought it, when you left it on an intersection, I think, when somehow it broke down or something, and then when you found it again in the paper. Your Isetta?
Yeah, no, those aren't the details.
Those aren't the correct details.
No,
That's
those are
why,
not.
yeah, okay.
I bought it brand new. My wife and I, we were married then, so that was 1957. We needed a second car. And we were walking down Wilshire in Santa Monica. And here was not a showroom as for motorcycles or anything. It was just a storefront. And we looked in, what the hell is that? And way in the back of this empty storefront was this funny looking car. But I lost my heart right then and there.
Right.
So we walked in and I looked all the way around it, like, what the hell is this? Where do you get in? It doesn't have a door. Well, it did, but I didn't see it. And the salesman came over, told me all about it, and I said, good, I'll take it. I'll take it. I've never driven it, I've never whatever, but I was so berserk. And it was my going from Topanga to Brentwood, and then ultimately to Pacific Palisades,
Wow.
where I changed jobs, every day, down and back.
Wow.
And mind you, there is one steep section coming up Topanga. The most the car would do in that spot was 30 miles an hour. But not a problem, because traffic was less, and people were friendlier or something, more courteous. They had little turn-off places all along that section that I would pull over and let the 3 cars go by and then get back on. So getting home was no problem. It ultimately was the second time I had an Isetta, or acquired the Isetta, because traffic had increased so. It was a matter of, I didn't dare get off onto one of those little spots. I would have to have waited until like midnight before the traffic was light enough that I could get in again. Anyway, how much tape do you have?
Plenty. So what I recall is that somehow there was a period when you no longer owned it,
Okay.
and then you found it again
That's right.
in the paper. I'd love to hear
That
about that.
was a coincidence beyond belief.
That's the part that was
Okay.
incredible. You got to tell me.
I drove it for several years, and then I finally decided, you know, I took it into BMW to have it tuned up and whatever. And they said, oh, we're not working those on those anymore. And we're not importing them, and we're not, what to do? Well, Frank had a friend of years past that every time she came over, she said, ah, I love that car. If you ever decide to sell it to me. Like, oh, I love it. Well, one day, after this, taking it in for service, and it was not running well, it was sputtering up the hills, and I walked into the kitchen and I said to Frank, is that Jeannie? And he said, yeah. Oh. So I grabbed the phone and I said, oh, this is, screwed up, wait a minute. Anyway, I sold her the car, and she lived in Pasadena. 3 weeks later, she was on the phone, that's what I was remembering. And I said to Frank, is that Jeannie? It is. Oh, let me talk with her. And I said, how's my old car? And her answer was, oh, that goddamn thing. That was not what I wanted to hear. However, it broke down, stopped working, right in the middle of a very important big intersection. She lived close to that, so she just got out of the car and left the damn thing right in the middle of the street and then walked home. And some guy called her and said, hey lady, I pushed your car over to the side of the road and I'd really like to come buy it. She said, here's my address. He came over, she handed him the pink slip, took the money, or no, pardon me, she gave it to him free, like, gone. Well, do I know who? No. Do I have a name? No. Do I have nothing? Then a couple years go by, and I said to Frank, oh, it was when the gas shortage came, and I said to Frank, oh my gosh, why did I ever sell the Isetta? 52 miles to the gallon, I should have kept it. Well, I started looking for another. I followed up one ad after the other. They were junk. Rusty, miserable junk. So it was like, that's that. One day, the lady who ran the Isetta, Messerschmitt, and Henkel Club, who lived right on the other side of that hill, here in Topanga, she and her husband, Frank and I, had become friendly, and we were out to dinner one Saturday night, and she said, oh, Jack, I got another Isetta. I was almost angry, because, God, I've been looking and looking and looking. She said, oh, but wait till you see it. It's the most loaded deluxe I've ever seen in our club. It's wonderful. Okay. Of course, it didn't run, but went over the next morning to see it. And as I walked from the front of her house to the back, where all the cars were, she said, do you think this is your old car? And I said, oh, Marilyn, I don't know. It couldn't be, you know, coincidence like, that's ridiculous. So, okay, we walked by 7 Isettas, and oh, and by that time I had said, looking at the one she's talking about, this is pink and white. Mine was gray and red, and so, well, we got there, and she opened up the door, and I said, oh, and mine had a radio. It was right there. Oh, but look, there's 2 holes. That's interesting. And then, well, we were comparing equipment, and she climbed over the top to get my license plate because it only had one in the back. And I wrote it down because my memory even then was not so good. Now on the way home, because I was going to ask Frank, do you remember this license plate number? It was on the seat, and I looked down on it and I thought, now if that were my license plate, what little ditty would I make up? Because I always made up a ditty, and I would say, New Jersey 740. Oh my God, that's my license plate. That's my old car. So it was like a revelation.
Yeah.
I got home and Frank said, hurry up, get in the house. Marilyn's on the phone. She found an inspection sticker. Whatever his name was, that gas Shell station. And I said, yeah, it was right across from our shop. They did every month or so. In those days, you had to change the oil every 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
So it was a different, protracted amount of time. Anyway, I said, yeah, it's Carl's Shell station. It was across the street from our shop. And again, that was my old car.
Wow.
But of course it didn't run. And Marilyn's husband made it run. A bunch of new parts were never needed. And then she sold it back to me. And that was a funny thing too, because I literally begged her, sell it back to me, please. Took her about 3 weeks before she said, okay. One of her subscribers wrote her, because there was an article about it, of course, in the Isetta News, that she put out. And one of her clients, her other members, said to her, if you hadn't sold that back to Jack, I was canceling my subscription. Which I thought was rather good.
That's great. Yeah, and it sounds like you just sold it again recently.
I did.
Yeah, because getting in and out was a challenge.
I am now
Yeah,
92,
yeah,
and there comes a time to do everything.
yeah.
And new owners were the right thing.
I'm sure they're appreciative.
And I found the right two guys.
Right.
They're in the car club that I belong to, which means that I will see it
Yeah.
from time to time. And he's done all kinds of, well, I'll say improvements. Yes, they are. It's a matter of, when I restored it, very little was available in parts,
Right.
like new parts. Now, there's a whole plethora of new parts available that have been manufactured by club members. So you can buy almost anything at all. Just pay money.
That's great. One other thing
Uh-oh.
you mentioned too when we were here last was kind of an interesting thing along those lines when you said you were going to ride, I guess it was either your Ariel or your Vincent down to some event somewhere, and you took a few corners and you decided, I don't know if it was right, that you know what, that didn't feel right anymore.
No.
And that's interesting to me.
Well, what happened was I used to go out for breakfast to the Rock store.
Mm-hmm.
And I left this one Sunday morning, and I was back within minutes, and Frank said, what's the matter? Why are you home?
Right.
I said, well, Frank, I didn't even get to the Mulholland Highway. And every time I came to a curve, I felt my grip tighten up. And I said to myself, what is that, Jack? That's called fear.
Right.
And that's no condition with which to ride a motorcycle. So I made a U-turn, came right home, never got on a bike again.
Right.
But that's a matter of self-preservation.
Right. Wisdom, I think.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Wisdom.
Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jack, it's just great to have these moments, and I really appreciate your sharing some events with us. So, thank you very much. Okay.